Hello. So this is a video that I had been wanting to put together for quite a while now, just to basically outline my journey to motherhood, as it's one which was very different to the normal kind of journey. I'd had a lot of people questioning me on what actually happened, considering that Leonardo came so much earlier than we had anticipated. So I did want to give my perspective, hopefully open some people's eyes up to the world of premature babies, and in this instance the extreme or micro-prems as they kind of call them, which Leonardo was. And yeah, just kind of life in the NICU or NICU and special care unit, which is something, and it sounds awful now considering how much time I spent there and how much I know the nurses and doctors have done for Leonardo and our family, but I had no idea that they actually existed, and I am assuming there's some people out there who are in the same boat as that. So hopefully this gives a bit of an insight as to what they do and what life is like when you have a premature baby and how that all kind of came to be. So hoping no one has to go through the journey that I did, as it wasn't a nice one by any means, but if you do, hopefully this provides some hope as well. So I'll start at the beginning. We found out that we were pregnant early October. All our scans were very normal, and I was what you would call an ideal candidate to fall pregnant, just taking into consideration my age, my physical fitness and everything. I was in a really good spot to be able to be pregnant. So all my scans and everything were very normal. Leo always measured very healthy, very well, everything looked great. We went to our 20-week scan, and that was when we kind of found out that something might be a little bit off. And then she got to scanning my cervix, and this is something which is only fairly new in your 20-week scan. So it's only been the last few years that they actually do check the length of your cervix. So when she got to my cervix, she went a little bit quiet, and we were kind of like, oh, something wrong here. And she said, oh, your cervix is measuring a bit short. I honestly had no idea what that meant. I didn't know your cervix could measure different lengths or anything. Then she called in another person to check the scan, and then another person kind of came in, and then a nurse came in, not a nurse, one of the ladies who was doing the scan, and she was like, right, this is what we're going to do. We're going to put you on progesterone, you need to do this and you need to do that, and we'll check you again, and you have to go and check with your doctor and go talk to your obstetrician and stuff. And I was like, hold on, a little bit overwhelmed, kind of going, I don't know what a short cervix means. Does that affect the baby at all? What is this progesterone? What's that going to do? I had no idea. My obstetrician at the time was also on holidays, and I couldn't get in contact with him, so I was a little bit kind of nervous about the whole situation. I ended up getting in contact with another obstetrician who was stepping in for my obstetrician who was away on holidays, and he kind of briefly explained to me what a short cervix meant, and he did say that sometimes it can lead to having your baby early, because it's like the shortening of your cervix obviously is kind of preparing you to give birth. So they didn't want mine to get any shorter, and they wanted to just kind of keep an eye on it and make sure that it's not getting any shorter. Yeah, so I kind of went away going, okay, so could come early, but he also kind of said that a lot of people go right through and have full-term pregnancies, no issues at all. So I was hanging on to that hope. But on the flip side of things, I definitely called my mum and my sister and was freaking out a little bit, going, oh my goodness, I'm going to have an early baby, because that's just what you do sometimes. As soon as you hear some kind of bit of bad news, you definitely do stress about it and Google things, which you should definitely never do. But so I went away and got the progesterone and started a course of that, and I was due to catch up with Lindsay, who's one of the head people of the fetal and that kind of stuff at the Royal. I was due to catch up with her. I think it was supposed to be 6 days, like a week on, basically. Took this progesterone, everything was fine. I was just kind of decided to put it in my mind that no, this is going to be fine, this is going to be normal. The progesterone, by the way, just kind of strengthens the cervix to try and stop it giving way, I guess. And yeah, so I got to the day before I was due to catch up with Lindsay and kind of see if my cervix was shortening and just kind of check the situation again. The night before, the day before, I'd been out and I had been shopping and preparing myself. I'd actually started buying some sheets, bassinet sheets and that kind of stuff. Got home that night and was sitting on the couch, and I definitely noticed some kind of period-like cramps, and this is where it's really tricky to kind of know, are they a normal pregnancy thing or are they not a normal pregnancy thing? Granted, I had not been pregnant before, and people do tell you that you can experience pains like growing pains or Braxton Hicks and all these kind of things. So I wasn't really sure what it was, but they were pretty intense crampings. I started timing them and they were getting closer together, and I was like, okay, this isn't normal. I'm literally 20 plus 6, so not even 21 weeks yet. And I called up the hospital and said, look, I'm having these cramps. I have been told I've got a short cervix, and they're like, right, get in straight away. So got our stuff sorted, went to get into the car, and opened up the car door, and that's when a big gush of water. My waters had broke, and not just a little bit, they had full torrential downpour broke. That's when I knew this was a little bit more serious than I had initially thought, and that was like, okay, let's get to the hospital pretty fast here. So we got in the car and zoomed straight to the hospital, and I mean, we went quick. Sam was dodging in and out of traffic like nothing else. We got there really fast, and the whole way I was losing water. Like, it was really starting to freak me out. I didn't realise you could have that much water inside of you. So we got to the hospital. They zipped me straight up to the maternity unit and put me in a delivery suite. And it was basically said from there and then, I still didn't really kind of know what was going on, but they had anticipated me having the baby right there and then. So they said normally if it's not within 24, 48 hours, it's within that week that you would deliver after losing your waters. So that was pretty scary time, incredibly scary time. I remember getting up and saying to one of the nurses, one of the midwives, I need to go to the bathroom, and she goes, oh, take this pan with you because it might be the baby. So that was incredibly daunting, and I don't think I'd really clicked that I was going to potentially lose him at this point, but they definitely thought that was what was happening, especially because I was so early. I was only 20 plus 6, so 20 weeks plus 6 days, not even 21 weeks yet. They don't class babies as viable until at least 23 weeks, so I still had a good couple of weeks until I could get to viability if that was what we wanted to do, was to continue this pregnancy, which is another thing that they give you the option, the very scary option of having a chat with the paediatrics kind of unit, the NICU staff, around, is this something you want to continue, or is this something that we should look at trying to end basically now? Because there's a lot of risks obviously with having a baby that early. So I stayed in the delivery suite for a week. Big beautiful room, mind you, but I was bed bound, so I was not allowed to get up and do anything but go to the bathrooms. That was the only time I was allowed to actually stand up. I got incredibly big numb patches down the sides of my legs from just being able to roll side to side, and that was, if anyone knows me, they know that sitting still is not my strong point, and I was going a little bit crazy. But I did get to that week mark, and the nurses and midwives and doctors were kind of like, okay, she's lasted a week, which is not what they had kind of thought would happen. So they did send me home because I wasn't at viability yet. So even if I was to deliver the baby, he wouldn't have been viable, and therefore he wouldn't make it. I'd had numerous conversations with the doctors who deal with premature babies from the NICU. That's when we met Peter, and we had to have those really tough conversations around if this was something we wanted to continue, considering I was lasting longer than they had thought. Sometimes families can decide that they want to wait until 24 weeks and then resuscitate, But we also had to have those tough conversations around what does this mean for our baby down the track, because obviously with having a baby that early, even if they do survive that time, due to being on potentially oxygen and all these other things, there's a lot of issues which can happen, which can develop from being born so early as well. So did we want to put ourselves in a position where we could potentially be looking after a baby who was severely disabled or had all these issues arise? Sam and I had decided that, look, as long as the baby is still fighting, we want to fight alongside him. So we wanted to give him the best possible chance. That meant that I had to go back at 22 plus 6 weeks, just before I reached viability at 23, and have a steroid shot. So that was my choice, that yes, I did want to be able to have the steroid shot as soon as I possibly can. And the steroid shot, that was to try and help baby's lungs develop, considering he was going to be born early, and considering he had little water, amniotic fluid around him. Once I hit that 22 plus 6, I was able to go back into the hospital, have the steroid shot, and they basically said, okay, you're here now until the baby comes. I had set a goal in my mind that I wanted to get to 28 weeks, because I knew that that was me making the 3rd trimester, because currently I was still in the 2nd trimester. And so yeah, I had to be on strict bed rest, which meant I could only get up and go to the bathroom, go to the toilet, showering. I didn't even shower every day because I was so petrified of losing more and more amniotic fluid. I was lucky in the sense that Leo was obviously still swallowing the little fluid that was surrounding him. He was still able to swallow that and wee it out, which meant he was like swallowing it, making more, because that's what it actually is like the baby weeing and kind of surrounding itself with this amniotic fluid. So he still had a little bit around him, which was definitely a blessing as well, to be able to keep him growing. Throughout the scans and stuff that I had done in the hospital, he was still growing, he was still healthy. I was really lucky that there was nothing wrong with my placenta, which meant that he was able to still keep on growing and getting bigger and doing what he's supposed to be doing. The issue being that because he didn't have that amniotic fluid, it was going to affect his lungs more than anything. They took my bloods all the time, and I was a little bit anemic at one point, so they put me on iron and just kind of kept monitoring me. They had said that if I was to get an infection, or if the baby was to get an infection, then that was all over, and that they had to get him out right there and then. The good thing about Leo was he was also sitting right down, head down, nice and low, ready to go, so I could give birth to him naturally. That was something also I was really kind of surprised about, because I thought if you're having a premature baby, you're basically having a cesarean, whereas nope, that's not the case these days. They really want you to be able to try and give birth naturally, if possible, vaginally if possible. So I was really lucky that his head stayed down nice and low and ready for whenever he was to come. I didn't last up until my 28-week goal, unfortunately. I did last another 2 weeks on top of that though, so I got him to 24 weeks plus 4. The day before, so the Sunday, I had started having some funny cramps again, and they started feeling a little bit like what I had experienced that first time when my waters had broke, and I was concerned about it. They were monitoring me pretty closely. I had doctors constantly kind of holding their hand to feel the contraction, well, if they were contractions, and they were kind of measuring my cervix and stuff to be able to see if he was actually in fact coming. Every time they kept measuring my cervix though, and they were like, there's still length to your cervix and it's still closed, it's not funneling. So it was really confusing in that I knew I had a short cervix, but I don't think that it actually was because I had a short cervix that I had him. When my waters broke initially, it wasn't due to infection. They didn't find any signs of infection. It was just spontaneous. And then with my short cervix, it didn't look like it was shortening as such, which is normally why the baby comes early. So yeah, they kind of didn't think he was coming at that point. So I tried to get some sleep overnight. They gave me some like endone and stuff to try and let me relax a little bit and actually get some sleep. It pretty much did nothing. The next day I was still getting these nasty cramps, and they were coming more and more severely, to the point that I was writhing in pain. And yeah, nothing was really helping the situation. And yeah, once we kind of did get to the point where they were like, okay, he's coming now, they raced me down to the delivery suite, where we were really lucky that the nurses and doctors in the NICU knew that Leo was going to be born prematurely. So they had the whole isolate, like his little cot, and with all the works, the bells and whistles, everything there ready to go for whatever they were thrown at when Leo did arrive. So got to the delivery suite in absolutely the most horrendous pain that you could imagine. I remember the nurses saying to me, don't worry, we'll give you some morphine once you get in there. And they gave me the little the gas thing to suck on, and then one of them had whispered to the other one, it's too late, there's no time for morphine. And I was like, are you kidding me? So I have to give birth to this baby naturally without any drugs, and it's just such a bizarre thing, because you think a small baby, it's not going to hurt as much. But afterwards the midwives did say to me, well, in actual fact, generally giving birth to a premature baby can hurt more, because one, your body's having to work that bit harder, because it's not like a heavy, fully developed baby to kind of use gravity to get out to a certain degree. It's like your body's having to try and push out this small baby. And I had no water either, or little to none, no water as well. So it's basically coming out kind of dry, I guess, in a sense. So yeah, that wasn't nice at all. But that was all pretty quick once we did get in there. It seems like a long process because I've been going from the night before, but once it was kind of like right to push, it was pretty much 2 pushes and he was there. And it wasn't that beautiful feeling that most mothers get, where you're able to kind of pull the baby up and have the baby on your chest or anything like that. It was, you can look down and see him, but basically he got whisked away pretty quickly and onto the isolate, which is what I could see straight in front of me, with about 20 people in the room as well. It wasn't just like Sam and I and a midwife. No, we had so many people in there ready to go, because they knew that this was a little 24-week baby being born, who had little to no amniotic fluid around them, so they knew what they were up against. They expressed my breast milk pretty much straight away, straight after I'd given birth, which is something I was really thankful that I was able to do. I didn't think I was going to be able to at 24 plus 4 weeks. It seems incredibly early, but your body definitely does just kick into gear no matter how early you have your baby. So that's something I was really fortunate to be able to do, and I honestly think it got Leo through a lot of the journey. So yeah, after that we got sent back to our room, and I had a shower, and it was this incredibly bizarre feeling that you'd just given birth, you just had a baby, but he wasn't there with you, and you didn't know when you were going to be able to see him next, and you didn't know if he was doing okay. And it wasn't for another few hours until we actually got to see him, to know how he was. Yeah, so it was about 6 or 7 at night before we actually got to go and see him, and I'd given birth to him at just before 3 p.m. Yeah, so I basically just sat there and prayed, in all honesty, and that's something I had done throughout the whole being on bed rest for a good month, and then throughout the rest of the NICU journey was I prayed every night, and it was something that I was able to use as a bit of a reflective process, and even somewhat of a coping mechanism to be able to reflect on what had happened during the day, and if we had any hurdles that we needed to overcome, to kind of ask for strength and to try and get him through. And he's here today. So yeah, that was my kind of way of coping with things to a certain degree as well. So yeah, once we did get to go and see Leo, Leo was a name that we had decided on nice and early on as well. I had floated the idea of Leo because I love that name, but yeah, it was just before he was born we probably really locked it in, and Sam was the one who liked the name Leonardo, and I'm more than happy to compromise. We wanted to give him a nice strong name, but also more than anything, it was to do with making him real. We knew this was going to be a rough journey and a long journey. We didn't know how things were going to kind of play out, but we needed to make him real so we could try and give him the best possible chance. So we gave him the name Leonardo Michael Dunn. Yeah, once we went and got to see Leo, we didn't get to hold him straight away. And not a lot of people have been in the NICU before, and it's an amazing place. What they can do is absolutely phenomenal in there, but it is a daunting place. And especially when it's your baby in there and you hear the alarms sounding, and there's alarms for various different things and you don't know what they mean to start with. And if you're anything like me and you go through that, you have to go through that journey, you really get to know what they mean. And that's something I can really strongly advise, is to kind of have a good understanding and question and know what everything means, because sometimes alarms go off and they don't necessarily mean worst case scenario. So it was really comforting for me to have a good understanding of what they meant. And it was funny because I did really get to know what the numbers meant, and I did become quite fixated on them, and I really educated myself around everything that Leo was kind of going through, to the point that the doctors would actually have conversations with me during handover and be like, oh, do you reckon we should up his feeds or something today, because do you think he'd cope with that? So yeah, it was funny that they knew that I knew him so well that it was enough to be able to take my points of view and take that into consideration, which was nice that they give you that sense of ownership, I guess, that he is your baby and you do know your baby regardless of the circumstances. And that's something else I can strongly suggest to anyone if they're going through this, is to try and be as hands-on as you possibly can. They give you the opportunity to do their cares, which is basically changing the nappy, washing their faces, and sometimes changing the CPAP mask or changing the breathing apparatus over. So if you can, absolutely do it, because it was so beneficial for me, and something I definitely took away with me when I finally did kind of get home. You'd had this professional advice the whole way through your journey, and you somewhat have a good understanding of your baby and what to expect, and possibly feel a little bit more prepared in taking them home. I definitely wasn't nearly as anxious as I thought I was going to be. But yeah, flip back to when we first started, absolute ball of anxiety, to the point I kept on questioning the universe, why on earth they would throw this kind of journey at someone as anxious as me, and then throw on top COVID-19, like just to really kind of kick you in the guts a little bit. That's fun. So we got a few weeks, I'm trying to think when the date was that they brought in restrictions, but we did definitely get a few weeks of being able to be together as a family before they separated it to just having one parent at a time with your baby, which, yeah, that really sucks when you're going through something as traumatizing as having a baby as early as Leo, and the problems that he was facing, and yeah, knowing that you weren't really going to be family again until he went home. So yeah, what I was saying, I didn't get to cuddle him until the 21st of Feb, and he was born on the 17th, so that was actually earlier than I thought it was going to be. Pretty incredible that the nurses are able to do that, even though they're covered in leads and the breathing apparatus and everything. It's so important to be able to do what they call like kangaroo cuddles, and that skin on skin, that feeling of the heartbeat, your heartbeat and your warmth. And it was amazing to be able to watch the monitors as soon as he was transferred onto my chest or Sam's chest, and just how much his numbers would settle, and no matter kind of how much of a stressful day he'd have, he'd just regulate to, his heart rate in particular would go back to what it was like when he was inside me as soon as he was on my chest, which was a pretty amazing feeling. So yeah, it was a rough journey in there, I'm not going to lie. The nurses are fantastic, and and the doctors, and they make it a lot easier by somewhat, they become your friends, they become your family in there, especially when the restrictions took place, and they were literally my only social outlet. So I can't thank the nursing staff enough, and the doctors for being there for me during that really tough time. Yeah, we definitely had some hurdles that we came up against, but Leo dodged so many bullets. He honestly did. We are so thankful that he got through as I don't want to say easy, but as smooth kind of sailing as you could for a 24-weeker. He had to have like 4 blood transfusions, which side note, can't stress enough how important these are, and if you can donate blood, then do it. They're so important for these little tiny ones, and as much as I hate needles, I want to be able to do it as soon as I possibly can as well. So he had blood transfusions. He had one little skin germ which wreaked a little bit of havoc on his body, which needed antibiotics to fix it, but thankfully he got through. His lungs were obviously his biggest hurdle. His breathing was his biggest hurdle to kind of overcome. We thought he was going to go home on low flow, like a little bit of oxygen. Really thankful that he was able to surprise us and start breathing on his own a good week and a half before he came home, so really thankful for that. And he had a hernia surgery as well, which they say is very common for little boys, in particular little prem boys. So yeah, it was just a little surgery. We waited until he got closer to term until he actually needed to have it done. However, they have to go on the breathing tube, and they do go on anaesthetic and everything. So I was really worried that was going to take us back a little bit, because knowing that the hernias, unless there's an issue, the hernias generally don't get done until they're close to home. I was just petrified that it was going to be like a few steps backwards, considering he'd only just got to breathing on his own by that point. So we were really thankful that he came out of it really well. He recovered super well, in all honesty, and as soon as he kind of woke up after the surgery, he was ready to pull that breathing tube out. So took it out, and they were ready to put him back on high flow just to give him a bit of oxygen, but no, he proved that he was ready to go by himself, and which was another kind of just, yeah, amazing by the little dude, little trooper. So yeah, we dodged a lot of bullets. Definitely. We were really thankful that he didn't have any bowel problems, which is quite common for these little prem babies. He poops like an absolute champion and eats like a champion, and he did from day dot. He was on his full feeds as well, which are little tiny feeds at the time, but yeah, he's doing really well in that department and fully breastfed now. Super excited about that. He didn't develop any sepsis, so blood infections. His hearing tests, he passed fine. His heart, his little duct closed over, which needs to close over, so that was good. His brain scans, his last ones came back completely normal, which is also great, a good sign. He did develop some ROP, which is the eye disease, but it was only really mild, and what did kind of develop, which was like the hemorrhaging in the retina, resolved itself. So his last eye test, they said all good, and they kind of said that early on that he wouldn't need any intervention, so no eye injections or laser surgery, which I was super thankful for. And hopefully his next eye test, they'll say he's all good and doesn't need to have him checked again, because it's not a really nice test, in all honesty. So yeah, he definitely dodged a lot of bullets. One of the biggest ones being that we thought he was going to come home on the low flow oxygen support, and yeah, him being able to breathe on his own was absolute miracle. So that's really amazing that he was able to do that. Prior to this, he had started breastfeeding at 35 weeks. He started really breastfeeding without any top up, so without any extra of my express breast milk going down his tube. At 32 weeks, we actually tried him on the breast because he'd started expressing interest, and he sucked like an absolute champion on his dummy from an early kind of gestation. So we were like, oh, well, we might as well give him a crack. And normally they don't develop their sucking reflex until like 35, 36 weeks. So really super thankful that he was able to do that nice and early and get an understanding of how to go about that. Obviously he wasn't taking full feeds or anything at 32 weeks, he was just getting an idea of it, but yeah, for him to actually start taking those full feeds at 35 weeks was such a win. It's really helped him and got him through. It's just the best stuff they possibly can be on when they're that little, so really thankful that I was able to do that. On the 21st of May, Leonardo came off all his breathing support, which meant we were able to book in his hernia surgery for the following Monday, which was the 25th of May. no one wants to have their baby taken away from them, especially for a surgery, no matter how minor it might be. That was awful, but we were really lucky that he recovered really well and was able to come back off all breathing support, which meant then we were able to look at when was he able to come home. So that was the Monday. He was supposed to be in the ICU for a bit longer, but because he had recovered well, we were able to put him back into special care. Also, the special care unit, we were actually moving over to their new unit in the new hospital on the Tuesday, I think it was. So we actually got to end up moving across with them, which that hospital is so beautiful. The new unit is just divine, with the views is so gorgeous. So we're really lucky to be able to spend some time in there before we went home and experience the little rooms where it's all kind of a nice, more family orientated environment where you're not kind of open to everyone and you're able to have that time with your baby. That was really nice. So once we got into the unit, we had a couple of days there, and on the Wednesday we had some conversations with Peter, our doctor, about, okay, what do we do now? How do we get him home, basically? So the hernia surgery being his last kind of hurdle to overcome, and because he recovered so well, we decided to pull his monitoring back a little bit, meaning we just kind of lessened the amount of numbers that we were monitoring him by, because that's more like a normal environment. When you take your baby home, you don't get to take all the monitors with you, unfortunately, because I was really fixated on those. So it was a bit difficult for me to see some of the numbers kind of disappearing, but I coped a lot better with that than I thought I was going to as well, which was great. And because the monitoring system came down a bit, we were able to move into a new room, which was one of the ones right in front of all the windows with the beautiful view as well. So that was just lovely. And with that conversation, we also talked about when we were going to head into the family room. Now, the family room is where you spend your last couple nights if you're a first-time parents. So Sam and I were going to be moving into the family room on the Friday night for the Friday and the Saturday night, with the hope that Leo would be coming home on the Sunday. It just so happened that the Friday night was my 30th birthday, so I couldn't have asked for a better present. I was so excited, considering I thought that it was going to be a bit of a write-off this year and I'd just have my 30th next year. But this was our first time that we actually got to be a family together, with no nurses there unless we called out and needed them, but yeah, as an actual proper family, which was so lovely. And yeah, we got to bring little Mr. Leonardo home on the Sunday, so the 31st of May. His due date wasn't actually until the 4th of June, so he's now 1 week plus 1 day corrected. That's what they call it. So it's pretty unheard of that 24-weekers go home before their due date as well. So as far as his milestones go now, they actually take them from his due date as well. So he's not obviously acting now as a 3.5-month-old baby by any means. He's acting as if he's 1 week old plus 1 day, and that's how we've got to kind of look at it when it comes to walking and all those kind of milestones that babies have. We've got to take it add on pretty much an extra 3.5-4 months. One of the other things that the doctors had said to me, and that I thought was really lovely for them to say, that I was able to take away, was they said that it really came down to our optimism and our dedication being parents to Leonardo. Optimism is something that I really strive to be as much as I possibly can, and really, really positive. Not a nice situation by any means, and don't get me wrong, I had my days where I just felt like absolute crap. I really did, and I'd go home an absolute ball of anxiety, and I didn't know how I was going to get through a lot of it, knowing those early days. And we didn't know if he was going to be coming home. We didn't know what we were up against and what he was going to be struck down with down the track, and to a certain degree we still don't know what's going to be happening down the track. We probably won't know until maybe he gets into school if he has any learning disabilities or anything like that. So far so good, because we've got those brain scans and everything kind of telling us that he's behaving as a normal baby now, which is wonderful. But yeah, you still have those days. I was really lucky that I had a really strong support network from my family, and especially Sam. He was able to really kind of bring me back up when I was having those crap days, and just make sure and reassure me that we can get through this. And we did, and I just kept telling myself, nah, you know what, he's got this, he's strong, he's so strong, he wanted to be here. So that's what definitely kind of got us through, and look who we've got now. Like, he's just extraordinary, and he really is an absolute little miracle. In summary, the information that everyone wanted to know was basically he was born at 24 plus 4 weeks after my waters had broke at 20 plus 6. I held on for roughly a month with little water there at all, on complete bed rest, due to a spontaneous break of waters, possibly something to do with my short cervix, but it doesn't really suggest that it was. The labour was possibly brought on by an infection, but they're not 100% sure. It more so seemed like it was spontaneous again, so hopefully it won't happen next time down the track. However, they have already said that they'll look at putting a cleage, a stitch in, when I do fall pregnant next time at like 12 to 14 weeks, just to make sure we can hold it in there as long as possible. He was a teeny tiny 675 grams when he was born. They think he might have been closer to 25 weeks because of that weight. He was 33 centimetres long, so just a little bit longer than a ruler, and his head circumference was only 21.5 centimetres. He is now an incredibly healthy 3.4 kilograms. That was at his last weigh-in as well. He's potentially a little bit, I wouldn't be surprised if he was bigger than that now, because he's been putting on weight so much better than your average size baby as well, which is awesome. His length, goodness, now it's testing me. I think he's 47 centimetres long, and his head circumference is up to 34 centimetres, I think. So he's measuring pretty well normal newborn baby size now. He's nearly out of his 5'0" clothing, which is crazy considering the first little suit we put on him for his Easter shoot, which is was even big on him then, was 7 zeros. So yeah, he's pretty much behaving as a normal newborn baby now, in every department, which is amazing. I've got some little things. His first beanie, super cute. We kept all these little trinkets and stuff so we can kind of show him down the track. His first nappy, this is ridiculously tiny, and we actually folded over because it was too big for him like that. So tiny. His little prongs and stuff from his CPAP mask. And yeah, we've kept all those bits and pieces, but this in particular is something I wanted to show because the nursing staff are so amazing in that they start these little journals for you for your time, and you can either let the nursing staff write in them or you can write in them yourself. And I definitely used it just to kind of document his journey as well. So it's got like little handprints and all his stuff, and the nurses wrote in it and I wrote in it, and we put all his photos in it. Yeah, so until he comes home. That was another good little coping mechanism for me to be able to deal with. So yeah, very sweet. The little tiny from where he was, pretty amazing. So yeah, that's all. I better go and grab the little mate so you can actually see him. He's a beautiful little boy, and we couldn't be happier. So thankful. Thanks. Hope this didn't go on too long and get too boring as I rambled. Thanks. Oops.
I close my eyes and I can see a world that's waiting up for me, that I call my own. Through the dark, through the door, through where no one's been before, but it feels like home. They can say it all sounds crazy. They can say I've lost my mind. I don't care, so call me crazy. We can live in a world that we design. 'Cause every night I lie in bed, the brightest colors fill my head. A million dreams are keeping me awake. I think of what the world could be There's a house we can build. Every room inside is filled with things from far away. Special things I compile, each one there.